I see what ho, chaps and chapettes, Game Chap and Bertie here. Yes, indeed, fellows, and I dare say we are now taking a look at here some of the known differences in the upcoming title Majora's Mask 3D. That's right, the next Zelda game on 3DS, as opposed to its Nintendo 64 predecessor, you know.
Most certainly, of course, this is the big title coming out this year, or one of the big Nintendo titles, being Majora's Mask 3D Remake, as you said.
Very exciting, old chap.
Oh, it most certainly is, yes. Now, we think it's going to be coming out fairly soon-ish, because they've already got the box version selling off different things. I don't know what
special editions, that whole thing,
here, figures here.
That's right.
So all of you out there, if you're wondering, we think it must be fairly soon. Now, we've collated these things together for you, and hopefully you'll find them interesting, so have a listen.
That's right, of course. Now, of course, the first point to note here, old boy, is the game itself is actually going to be running on the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D engine.
Yes, that's an important point. Of course, Ocarina of Time 3D was rushed a little due to being a 3DS launch title.
Was it, old chap?
Well, apparently, most certainly. Now, however, Majora's Mask 3D has been in development, according to Nintendo, since around 2011. So, they've had plenty of time to perfect the thing, and we do expect something quite good, don't we?
Of course, old boy. Now, Ocarina of Time 3D was, of course, a 3DS launch title, so they didn't actually have long to get that exactly right. But since the fans were petitioning Nintendo to make a Majora's Mask 3D title, apparently, secretly, the company, of course, are very secretive like that, they were actually working under wraps on Majora's Mask since just after Ocarina came out. In other words, they've been on this game since 2011. That's almost 3.5 years, old chap.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's a very, very... We've got some gaming companies out there, making entire, very, very in-depth titles in a year. So 2011 to now, we do expect some things. So, of course, a lot of people and fans are going to be asking, well, I wonder what the differences will be. Well, shall we look at them? Now,
yes, indeed, old boy. Now, just before you come to that point, you, of course, said that they've had a very long time to make it perfect, and that's right. So we do have high expectations for this game.
We do, yes, most certainly. Now, the primary and most notable features are, of course, the new 3D graphics as opposed to the other one, and also new ways to control the game, i.e. touchscreen and gyroscope controls.
That's right, of course. We've got these brand new, shiny, polished up 3D graphics, which of course are a big plus over the originals on the N64, and indeed if you take a look there, you can see quite a big difference between the two, and
yes.
Also, apparently, building somewhat on the technology introduced in A Link Between Worlds on the 3DS, there's going to be new ways to control the game. That of course means using the touchscreen, as Birdie said, and the gyroscope controls. In other words, perhaps a little similar to the Ocarina of Time 3D, but perhaps this time expressed in new and interesting ways.
So it looks like we're going to be looking at differences, not just graphical differences you're looking at, but actually, differences in pressing the buttons and controlling the thing yourself.
That's right.
Which is rather important, I think, because I think Nintendo will be wanting to get, of course we know it's the same game, but an entirely new feel and something exciting for the fans.
I think so, but of course that is not all, fellows, and indeed there are some other very important alterations to this game. Now, we do know Nintendo are going to be revealing more in the near future, but for now what we do know is that apparently there's a couple of things. Firstly, some of the boss battles are going to be changed.
Ah, yes, that's correct. Yes, boss battles change. And also there will be a brand new fishing system in the game.
A new fishing system?
A new one, yes, indeed.
Well, that is quite big, old boy, indeed. We, of course, didn't see any fishing in the original Majora's Mask. We did see it in Ocarina of Time 3D. But perhaps using the same technology from that game, they've said, well, here's a great idea. Why don't we bring that fun sort of fishing game into Majora's Mask as well?
Well, since you say it wasn't actually in the other game, in the original game, I wonder how they've done that. Have they added something to the story? Or is it a side mission or something?
Perhaps it's at the farm where you can go fishing. Who knows, old chap?
Well, it's very interesting.
Mr. Aonuma, the series producer, did say in an interview that, of course, it would be rather funny, of course, to go fishing and just casually catching fish and whatnot while the moon falls down and crushes the world, old chap. So you've got this sort of strange and darkly humorous contrast there between fishing and the end of the world, as it were. But it's a rather interesting new mechanic, which I dare say, if I had to bet, I'd bet it was based on the Majora's Mask, the Ocarina of Time 3D fishing system.
It could well be an interesting point, and something once again interesting that they are going to be adding to the game. Now, one of the primary things that Mr. Onuma, the series producer, wanted to change in the 3DS version of Majora's Mask was the things that weren't explained in the original game.
Really?
Yes, most certainly.
Now that's an interesting point, of course. What exactly does he mean by the things that weren't explained in the original game? Is he talking here story elements, or just generally confusing bits of the game?
Well, that's a very good point. Yes, indeed. I mean, it could be either or both of those.
Yes.
We don't know. But it's a very interesting point because maybe they're going to expand on the story, explain more of the story than was in the original.
Yes, and without going into any spoilerific details here, we can say, of course, there were quite some things that didn't quite make a lot of sense and weren't fully explained in the original game. So perhaps this time there's going to be some answers to some long-standing questions. Who knows?
Well, I think so. So I think as you start putting this together, we're just going to look at some more points now, differences. But we begin to build a picture here of a game that looks rather fun in that we have graphical changes, we have input changes playing the game, and we've got actual story perhaps changes and things that are going on.
And gameplay changes with that new fishing mechanic. And of course, I just have to throw this point in as well. What if there might just be a Master Quest mode introduced by Nintendo new for Majora's Mask? That's just a possibility, old chap.
Well, very interesting, and I think it is a possibility, but, if they do it, then we shouldn't be perhaps too surprised, because they are, after all, remaking an old game, so we do expect all this, really.
We do expect that. We did see it, of course, in Ocarina of Time 3D, so we wouldn't be pushing the envelope too far to say that possibility exists for Majora's Mask as well.
Most certainly. Now, he also clarified that the game has not been made easier, and yes, indeed, and there are no extra hints thrown in, but there are many other mechanisms, etc., which he thinks will be noticeable.
I see. So I wonder what kinds of mechanisms he actually means.
Well, exactly. Presumably gameplay itself that's going on in the game, but it's certainly very interesting. But they'll be there and they'll be different to the last game.
Well, certainly, as we said earlier, we do know he's going to be introducing this time gyroscope and touchscreen controls, so perhaps that's what he's talking about, old chap.
It could well be. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But something we do know is that the boss fights are going to be altered. He wants that to happen.
Yes.
So it's going to happen. Perhaps changing the way that the particular boss is defeated, maybe.
Yes, indeed. He did say, for example, if you played the remake and beat a certain boss, and then you went back to the original, you might find yourself asking the question, well, how do I beat this chap again? Because it's changed. The method, the overall way of taking him out is actually different, you'll say.
Most certainly, yes, indeed. So, boss fight differences there, how you actually go about fighting the boss, perhaps killing the boss, whatever, maybe during or after. I mean, in the Hyrule Warriors, Wii U, we've got the difference where the bosses are going to be roaming about more rather than confined within a room. So they obviously like that idea, and they're bringing it into changes into the Majora's Mask one.
Yes, and we'll have to see exactly what kinds of changes there'll be. Now, another new mechanic, according to a certain description found on the internet, is the addition of what's known as feather statues. Now, the original game only had owl statues for a temporary game save, but apparently these new feather statues, according to the rumour, will allow you to save anytime you want.
Now that's going to be very, very useful indeed, no doubt about it.
Yes.
Because you can just save whenever you want. Of course, before, if you may play quite a fair bit of it, and then you can't save.
That's right.
You have to find wrong or out.
You've got to find an owl statue. That's right, of course. And indeed, perhaps if you just want to quickly fill the system over and go and do something else, for example, it's dinner time or homework time or work time or something. Yes. You can't just leave it if the original system is in place. But it seems using these feather statues, a bit like Ocarina of Time 3D, you'll be able to say, no, I want to save now. I've got to go and I don't know, wash the dishes or something, and you can just press the save button and off you go.
Most certainly. So we've got all these changes, and of course we also have, this is going to obviously be played on the 3DS. Yes. But of course we know we have a new 3DS coming out.
That's right.
So we've got the old and new 3DSs. Now regarding...
That raises another question, doesn't it, old chap?
Well, it most certainly does, yes indeed. And of course, now regarding differences between the old and new 3DS that will be coming out, you may already have a version, if I don't know, but there won't actually be any graphical differences, of course, in the two versions of the actual hardware.
That's right.
But the new 3DS may have different features in other areas which are yet to be revealed by the company.
So, of course, Fidelis, the differences between the standard and new 3DS, and of course we are talking the brand new Nintendo 3DS here that has the C-stick, the screen that follows your head around, etc., and so forth, coming out very soon in Europe, and I understand some people in the UK already have that thanks to a special promotion of sorts.
Most certainly, yes indeed.
Now, of course, the question indeed, what precisely will those differences be? Well, there won't be any graphical upgrades of sorts, but indeed it seems that perhaps using these new features here and there, like, I don't know, the new C-stick, etc., and so forth, we may see certain bonuses and perks for those who are playing on the new console.
Most certainly, yes, as we said earlier there, so input changes and things like that, which make the game a little bit more fun, differences to the other game, which should spice it up nicely.
I think we're talking small bonuses here, old chap. Nothing huge, but certainly perhaps a nice bonus for those who have the new console. And of course, also, this is an interesting point, we know there's been quite a large change to the way the moon looks.
Yes, indeed. Now, of course, the moon, a main feature there of the game,
Yes.
a big feature that everyone recognises, it's now going to be apparently more menacing, yet perhaps slightly less, well, shall we say, creepy than the original.
Well, indeed, and I think you have to compare the two, old chap. I mean, the new moon is, of course, rather nasty, has a grotesque, sort of pronounced nose, a big grimacing grin. The original one was, of course, perhaps a little bit more restrained in the way it looked, but perhaps at the same time, I think the original one was a tad more spooky and just generally chilling, old chap, unsettling, you know.
Well, it could be. I mean, it remains to be seen how it looks in full glorious 3D as it's staring at you at the screen.
Well, indeed.
We'll have to wait and see. But most certainly...
It's not exactly pretty, old chap.
Well, it's not pretty, no, indeed. But certainly as we look at these changes and differences between the two games, it looks like the new one, you know, it is going to be a rather fun game to play. But as we said earlier, there is a remake of the game, so we do expect this, really.
Well, yes, I mean, one of the problems of the original Majora's Mask, and indeed I think it perhaps may have had some criticism at the time, was the graphics really weren't all that good. In fact, they were quite blotchy and unclear. They're not really very good. Even by the N64 standards, they weren't all that special. So, of course, Nintendo have had their big chance now to really overhaul this game. And, I mean, what do you think, El Chap? Do you think they've done a great job of the graphics so far?
Well, I think from what we can see so far, I think they've done, you know, quite a good job, most certainly, yes indeed.
It's quite modernised and fresh looking, I think, El Chap.
Yes, modernised and fresh, yes. As I said, we do expect that because they've been working on it a long time. It's a remake of a game rather than a brand new game. So, yes, but I think there's a lot of excitement about it, playing the game, and I think the differences we can see so far make it a game that people are going to want to purchase.
Certainly, El Chap. It is, of course, a very cult title. Many fans will be interested in seeing what they've done with it in 2015, of course, the changes they've made since the original, and certainly the Nintendo team appear to have felt something of free rein here to just go all out and make changes here and there, as of course we've seen with the changes of boss battles, the fishing mechanic, etc. and so forth.
Most certainly. So what do you think out there? Do you think that this game is, you know, you're excited about these changes and you think that the changes we've spoken about here actually sound good fun?
Well,
or
indeed.
What do you think?
What do you think, fellows? Do these changes mean good things for Majora's Mask and Zelda, or should the game have been left untouched? What are your thoughts, I say?
Most certainly, yes indeed. Let us know. And also don't forget over on our other channel, TheChapsPlay, if you like Captain Toad or anything Nintendo like that, pop over there. We're running a series. We're doing a walkthrough of Captain Toad. Rather fun.
Indeed, I say, but there you go, fellas. This has been Game Chap and Buddy bringing you the differences in Majora's Mask on the 3DS as opposed to the N64.
Yes.
And we'll have more coverage for you soon, so stay tuned, I say.
Oh, yes, indeed.
We look forward to seeing you then, fellas. Do join us, I say. Until then.